everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Andrea and today I'm going to talk to you about a book I read over the holidays and I really enjoyed this. I want to talk about it. So it's called Wild Things, or The Joy of Reading Children's Literature as an Adult, and it's written by Bruce Handy. So I watched this one YouTube channel called Politics and Prose, and it's hosted by this one bookstore in the United States where they often have writers right after they've published a book, and they'll come talk to you about the book and they'll give a lecture and then people do a Q&A. Bruce Handy did one of these and I saw him give his lecture and I thought he was so well spoken and humble, and at the same time you can tell that he's just so passionate about children's literature and how it creates a bond between parents and children, or just the act of kind of reading it out loud to someone younger. And since he had recently reread a bunch of children's books as his children were growing up, he decided to start writing this book. And I immediately wanted to get my hands on it. I should also mention that Bruce Handy also writes for The New Yorker, so he's a journalist who has honestly mastered the craft of delivering really important information in a way that's both relatable but also not condescending in any way. And I think I really appreciate that style, and the style really carried through in this book as well. So he kind of plays around with form a little bit, and I really like that. So most nonfiction books that write about children's literature often do it in a chronological order. So they'll start with Aesop's Fables and they'll work their way up to the Brothers Grimm, Lewis Carroll, Peter Pan, so on. He kind of went at it in the order that you would read it as a person growing up, in your chronological order. So his very first chapter kind of looks at Margaret Wise Brown and Goodnight Moon. He kind of reminds you of how simplistic some of the early literature that you have to read to your children. You kind of both get bored, but at the same time you realize that it has a very important lesson, or that it's very relatable. So one line that I really enjoyed, where he kind of talks about how children's authors write, the ones that are very successful, like Margaret Wise Brown, is that they look at the world from below and note its less respectable aspects, just as little children playing on the floor can see the chewing gum stuck to the underside of a polished mahogany table. And the last chapter of this book focuses on introducing children to the topic of death. And I really enjoy that topic because I was wondering how he was going to tackle it. And the truth is that in real life, most children will get introduced to death in different ways. Like sometimes maybe someone in your family is dying, but for the most part, most children are protected and sheltered from these topics in the real world. And instead, they sort of get introduced to it through literature. And he spends the entire last chapter focusing on Charlotte's Web, and how that's kind of one of the greatest moments in literature, or in children's literature, where kids get a real sense of what death means. And I really liked his discussion on E.B. White's Charlotte's Web and his take on it. And another thing that Bruce Handy does very well in this book is that he kind of fills in the gaps. So a lot of children's literature, nonfiction books, kind of take on big topics. So they'll take on, Alice in Wonderland, they'll take on the Grimms, and Handy kind of takes lesser known people and spends some time both covering a little bit of their biography, but also kind of covering the essence of who they were. So I'll give you an example. For Margaret Wise Browning, the first chapter focusing on Goodnight Moon, he kind of really goes deep into her biography because not a lot of people have covered her life. He says, this woman was extraordinary and she faced some rejections and then published so many books, and people thought Goodnight Moon would be nothing, including her. And then children just connected to that book so much that almost every parent had to have a copy of it. And it's kind of one of these amazing success stories that we never really hear about, even though we have all heard about Goodnight Moon. Another one that I really enjoyed was Maurice Sendak, and his really odd humor and the way that children connected to that. And I'll read you this one paragraph that honestly made me laugh so much. So this is Maurice Sendak talking to Larry King in 1991. A little boy wrote, "I love your book, you're great." And then he drew a little picture, and I wrote back, and I drew him a little picture. And then I got a letter from his mother, and she said, "Edward liked your letter so much, he ate it." It was like the ultimate compliment. He didn't preserve it. He didn't say, "Ooh, I have an autographed picture." He ate it. I mean, that's how primal, that's how animalistic, that's how passionate we are as small people. And throughout this whole book, just Handy tries to kind of capture both the memories of what it was like to be a kid and at the same time what it's like to be an adult, both looking back and remembering, but also kind of looking at it with new understandings and seeing just how well this was crafted from an artistic point of view. The only kind of downside that I saw to this book, and it's very minor and it was done intentionally, so it's not really a downside, is that he does avoid Harry Potter. And I've seen a lot of children's lit nonfiction books do this, and I've had children's literature professors do this. To be honest, I understand that it's a very big topic and it's very well loved, and probably your audience has read it multiple times, but I don't think we should skip it just because of that. I think it's huge, it's monumental, it's so important, and it's taken up a huge chunk of children's lives from 1998 onwards, but also children's literature's platform has changed forever. Like right now, if you're a children's lit author, you're competing with Harry Potter at all times, and you have to recognize that whoever writes for children from now on will have either read Harry Potter or will know that their audience has read Harry Potter. So it raises the bar a lot, and for that reason it's very, very significant. And I don't really like it when people skip it. I understand why he did, and he does give a nod at the introduction. He says, you know, "I want to do a special nod to J.K. Rowling, who created a monument of contemporary children's literature, one I feel privileged to have experienced in real time alongside my kids." And the way he kind of reasons this is that I have nothing to add to the conversation, and I respect that. Like, it's a pretty big topic. So overall, I really enjoyed this book, and if you are kind of in a reading slump and want something to sort of like trigger that passion of reading for you again, or just kind of remind you what you love about books, or just remind you of the children's books you used to love, I would highly recommend this book because I really enjoyed reading it. So all I can offer you is my personal opinion. That's it. Let me know in the comments if you want to read this, or if you have read it, what did you think? I hope to see you soon in my next video. Bye!